important, because otherwise, as Tom said, where do people go?
Yeah, it does seem like the way it's been hasn't necessarily worked exactly. Dual reg is good, but it helps teams from time to time, but it isn't good for certain areas. So it isn't good for players who are doing well in the academy side, but you need to test out yourself to see what they're doing. You struggle to be at all your games, and plus you don't get that one-on-one contact with those players during the games that you'd get if you had your own coaching staff on the sideline of a reserve game. So seeing how those kids do when they can get a bit of experience, and players returning from injury, you don't necessarily want them sent out to a lesser competition, and them have to get in the throes of a real competitive game when you can play them in a semi-competitive game that'll still get their fitness back to scratch, but not necessarily put them in such a dangerous scenario, I suppose. You can take them off whenever you feel like they've done the minutes that you wanted them to do, and things like that. So I certainly think it's a sensible thing for the clubs to have, and it was always a strange thing that it went away. So I think it's a positive too. I'm with you on that, Sarah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's a point that James Clark made last year when we were at the junior takeover, that especially forwards and things, it takes a number of years before you can tell whether they are actually going to make it, and having to make that call at 16 as to whether you're going to give them the scholarship place, it's too young. They need to have that extra time to be able to develop, so you can see, basically whether they're going to make it or not, and too many players are having that decision made on them too early.
Yeah, and it means you've got the chance to become more informed whilst you're making that decision on these players as well. So you're not risking letting them step away from a Super League club side and become disenfranchised with the game because of it. There might not be spots for them necessarily at these other sides if they don't have the budgets to spend the wages on the players as well. And this means that there's more chance for those players to get game time, doesn't it? It's just a no-brainer. Exactly. And it can't be that expensive. Some clubs, the estimates have varied over the years, haven't they? But some of the clubs have said it isn't expensive to run as long as you know it's consistently going to happen and the games can be planned. You can plan all your travel, you can plan all your match days, and it's easy. It's not too much of an expense. The part of the problem was coming in that you couldn't plan because the games were so infrequent. The teams squads weren't built to have reserves, so you wouldn't necessarily always get the games going ahead anyway, and that's why teams like Wigan and St Helens and Warrington didn't have reserve teams this year, because they were unsure of how consistent fixtures would be. Now at least everyone knows where they stand, which I think is fantastic. And plus you can get these Championship and League One teams being part of the same competition. It doesn't just have to be Super League against Super League at that level, because they're not playing for a trophy. They're not going to have like a reserves grand final and things like that. It's a sub-level competition. It's to get game time. I don't know. I mean,
until very recently, we used to have an under-21s grand final still.
Yeah, well, that was the reserves, wasn't it? It was like under-21s plus you had 4 or 5 overage players when the system was last in place before about 6-7 years ago, was it? 8 years ago?
I don't know. I just remember being very heavily pregnant with Luke and going to watch Hull against Leeds in the final.
Yeah.
So that would have been 2007. I think it carried on maybe a year or two after that.
It did, yeah. It's probably been close to 10 years, hasn't it? It just feels like maybe less time ago. But I just don't think you need a grand final. They're not planning on having a grand final, are they? I don't think you need one at that level, because you're talking about first team squad players, most of the players that will be playing in that side. So their aspiration is to win the grand final, not to win reserves grand final. I think it all sounds sensible to me what they've come up with.
Yeah, just giving players game time, and hopefully then it'll mean that we can sort of get away from some of this silly dual reg stuff and encourage all teams to sort of be more sustainable.
Yeah, because some of the problems with dual reg, and actually one of the stories that me and who was it last week? Alan?
No, it was Tim, wasn't it, last week?
Tim last week. One of the stories we've talked about over the last few weeks, and I can't remember who it was we were talking about, but there was a player who'd played for like 3 teams in the same competition this season because of like various dual reg and loan agreements and that sort of thing. And this should cut out that sort of part of it.
Yeah, because you're not going to be Hull aren't going to be sending someone to Doncaster on dual reg when actually they can get their game time by playing in the reserves, because you know that you're going to have a reserves match every week.
Exactly. So your dual reg partnership, which is going to remain, the dual reg system is going to remain anyway, will be more for players that you know aren't going to necessarily be playing in your first team unless an injury curse strikes. Yeah. So there's still the odd player you can send out on a lengthy, on a sort of semi-permanent basis.
But that's the difference, isn't it? You're going to be able to send them out on a longer term thing. It's not going to be a week by week thing. So it's actually going to benefit the other club more because they know that they're going to have this player for 3 months or whatever. Yeah,
that's what you'd set out with that expectation, exactly, wouldn't you? You wouldn't be expecting them to just say, oh, we've got so-and-so available this week, do you want them? You'd actually be saying, this player we want to get some time in the Championship, or we want to get some time in League One, and we think they're ready for it. Are you willing to play them as much as possible? Obviously, if we get injuries, we'll have to pull them back. But I think it's... that's
but you'd have your reserves as a first choice to pull back, to be using, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and you wouldn't be necessarily having your top 20, 25 players any of them going out on dual reg then, would you? They'd be staying at the club, and it'd be the sort of squad numbers 25 to 35 who are going out on dual reg. That's another good reason. Yeah, you're right. Okay, someone who benefited from a dual reg spell actually is this next player. Well, let's say, do we say dual reg or do we say he played for their reserve side in the Championship? But Leeds centre Harry Newman has signed a new 3-year contract with the club. The England Academy star will remain at Emerald Headingley until at least the end of the 2022 season. And obviously, he had some game time at Featherstone, but this year, once he's been sprung into the Rhinos first team, has been an absolute shining light in what has been a shite season for the Rhinos. He's been the real bright spot.
Yep. London Broncos have signed Castleford Tigers halfback Corey Aston on a 2-year deal. The 25-year-old, who has scored 3 tries in 9 appearances this season, will join the Broncos for the 2020 campaign. I think that's a good signing for them.
Yeah, more clubs than Shane Lowry, doesn't he? Good player, though, with some Super League experience now, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting where London finish. I think...
Do you think they're kind of covering both bases here, though? That is a player that could be a very good player at the Championship.
I was going to say, I think in the Championship he's going to be really good. In the Super League, he's okay, isn't he?
He can still perform, can't he, at that level, and see if he can kick on when he gets more responsibility. Yeah, sensible, yeah. London have also done some business by re-signing hooker Eloi Pelissier to a new 2-year deal with the club. The France international, who's earned 16 caps for his country, I don't know why I copied and pasted that in. It's not that relevant, is it? He'll remain at the Broncos anyway until the end of the 2021 season. And Tom Andrews got in touch to say, don't think I've had a dig at London yet this season. Here goes. Championship hooker re-signs for championship-bound team. I think he's already regretting sending that opinion in during the week.
Yeah, people in glass houses, Tom. Sorry. Huddersfield Giants prop Paul Clough could be out for a month after breaking a hand, while back rower Dale Ferguson is set to miss the rest of the season. Clough, 31, has been limited to 13 games for the Giant in 2019 because of previous injuries. Ferguson, also 31, has made just 1 appearance this term after a long layoff, but finished the game against Wakefield with blurred vision.
I mean, Clough, that's just an injury, but Ferguson, that's a worry, isn't it?
Yeah.
He comes back, makes 1 appearance, and is already off. And didn't he have like nerve problems before that? So there's...
Yeah, it just doesn't sound good, does it? These, something like blurred vision, it's really not a good one. Because it depends. It could be serious.
Well, it just because it's stacked up so many different kind of injuries over the last two and a half years as well. So we wish him all the best for certain. Hull KR hooker Matt Parcell could miss the rest of the season with a shoulder injury which may require surgery. The 26-year-old Australian joined Rovers for the remainder of the season just last month. He scored 2 tries in 3 games. They're going to miss him, and Tom Andrews says the pollen count must have been really high when I read this story. as if as in life you get nice things and someone swings them round like a rag doll and fucks its shoulder. Gutted.
Well, that'll teach them, won't it?
I mean, it's a big story. It is a big story, though, isn't it, for Hull KR? Because he seemed like the catalyst to turn things around. He had a couple of really good performances in this side, and man of the match on his debut, and then also played very well in the game they got injured against Leeds. It's taking your sort of... No, I don't want you to take your Hull FC. Just laugh. This is a problem for him.
It is, yeah. That's what happens when you bring your old mates in, Tony Smith.
But, he's a good player, and hopefully we get to see him again before the end of the season, because he certainly makes games more entertaining when he's playing than the games that they're playing without him. Okay. What's next?
Catalan's winger Jody Broughton will have surgery to repair a meniscal injury in his knee, which could result in an absence of up to 4 months. The 31-year-old only returned to action for the Super League club in May from a 10-month absence after knee and bicep injuries. Broughton will also see a specialist for a neck injury. Again, this just doesn't bode well, does it?
You gotta be thinking about hanging your boots up and taking on the quantity surveying game full time, haven't you, if you're Jody Broughton? Because
31's not young, is it?
But it's just all the different injuries as well stacking up.
That's what I mean. It's just not good.
No, and he'd done great. He'd scored 5 tries in 3 games since he'd come back as well.
Yeah.
Well, 5 tries in 2.5 games, really. It's real shame for Jody Broughton. I've got nothing but good thoughts for that guy as well. I think hopefully he does the right thing and he either gets his body sorted and gets a club for himself for next year, or does the right thing if he needs to retire. Okay.
Yeah.
I hoped I didn't get this news story in the trade off, but it turns out I have.
You should have planned it better then, shouldn't you? Counted the stories and worked it out from there.
Yeah, I should have done. Anyway, Catalans have agreed full-time deals with 6 players from the club's reserve team and have offered a further 4 deals to junior players. The Dragons have handed a total of 10 new deals to players who have progressed through the club's academy system. So, reserve team players Romain Franco, Mathieu Koza, Tiaki Chan, Valentin Zafra, Bastian Shimone and Ugo Martin have penned full-time contracts. I'm sure Ugo Martin's had a full-time contract before, but maybe I'm wrong. Junior reserve team players Romain Kadimi, Maxime Job, Joe Chan and Alan Baby.
That wasn't too hard.
Alan Babby maybe, but Alan Baby. They've signed their first contract with the Dragons. I wonder if the 2 Chans there are relations to the what is he, director of rugby or something like that there, or head of player, I don't know, something. But Alex Chan is it?
Joe, yeah.
They must be related to him.
Poor Tiaki. When you've got Joe Chan and then Tiaki.
I can't get past Alan Baby.
Another contentious story then. Louis Johnson and Harvey Levett have both been recalled from their loan spells at Hull Kingston Rovers by Warrington Wolves. And Tom Andrews said, "I'll start by saying I understand that these players belong to Warrington, but looking at a bigger picture with loan rules, I don't think teams should be allowed to recall players already named in a 19-man squad. All loans for the next week should be sorted on the Monday. Can't imagine it's good for the individual players or the team losing out 24 hours before a game." What are your thoughts?
I've got to say, I've got some sympathy here with the players and with Hull Kingston Rovers, mostly because neither of them actually made the 17 for the Warrington side at the weekend. That, to me, is... That's just wrong. To be honest, it's just wrong. And Hull KR, maybe some of the young players they had to play in this game, and I'm thinking particularly Owen Harrison, who didn't have his best moments in a high-pressure situation. might not have had to been thrown in if these two were available, and I just think that could have changed the outcome of that game. But that's by the by in a way. If you can't produce enough of your own players or keep enough of your own players fit, then you've kind of got yourself into that situation. However,